Breath rasps over an open radio, thin and rough, as heat presses into the stone throat called Gray 12. Dust clings to helmets and straps around Indigo 6, settling like grit in a cut while the canyon holds its air too tight. Every pause feels heavy, like the ground itself is thinking about closing. Cut to morning at Camp Ridgeway, where the runway shimmers and the smell of JP-8 rides the wind. Forklifts hum, headset cords snap against uniforms, and the day pretends to be routine for one more minute. The base keeps moving, but the tempo is half a step off. Across the map table sits a rule that everyone repeats without flair. No aircraft survives Gray 12, and no one wastes breath trying to prove it wrong. A clear voice from the command tent adds one fact that matters more than rumor and fear. Indigo 6 is still alive. Inside Hangar 4, an A-10C Thunderbolt 2 waits under a tired tarp like a held breath. Write-ups crowd its forms. AL-47 CMDS is degraded, and a few flare and chaff buckets are not ready. Good enough to fly, if hands stay precise. The jet looks scuffed, but honest. A tool that knows pain and keeps working. So, the board is set. Either someone opens the sky today, or the canyon eats another name. Nothing in between. The corridor for two CH-47F Chinook airframes will only appear if the pilot builds it with discipline. Clean hands on procedure, and a feel for inches measured in heat and stone. Gray 12 is a stone throat that bends sound and wind in strange ways. Cross-currents roll off the walls while the canyon funnels noise, so targets hear late and aim early. Pilots feel the air tighten as if the ground is trying to pull them down. The terrain also builds perfect shooting angles for infrared manpads tucked behind ribs of rock. A team that guesses the egress wrong by a heartbeat can fly straight into a waiting arc. Once inside, line of sight snaps shut and the exit becomes a knife edge. Terrain masking can hide a jet from sensors and eyes, but it can also hide the only safe turn. A shallow attack angle is not style. It is survival. Because steep fire creates ricochet that can skip down into friendly positions. Offsets keep the gun clear of Indigo 6 and keep the canyon from punishing good intent. In the command tent, the culture is simple and strict. Colonel Patrick Nolan asks one thing in a calm voice. Is Indigo still breathing? And the answer moves the room from argument to action. No one tries to fly a cockpit from a chair because that habit gets people killed. The frame for Rotary Detachment 47 is even cleaner. Two CH-47F Chinook airframes will conduct casualty evacuation or extraction only when Ghost 3 opens a corridor that is cleared and controlled. The helicopters are heavy lift, not door gunners for a gun run, and their safety depends on timing and altitude that match the terrain. Captain Lauren Pierce works the feeds and marks, likely firing points with a thick black loop on the map. First, Lieutenant Ethan Morales draws conservative ingress and egress routes, adds holds that respect fuel and wind, and tapes a backup line if weather shifts. Staff Sergeant Ryan McAllister trims the net to short. Clean bursts, so pilots hear breathing, not chatter. Risk is not theater here. It is math done at low altitude, where inches matter, and every second has a price. That is why the unit keeps the language tight and lets the plan breathe, only when the corridor is real. So, the legend is not drama. It is a record written by wind, rock, and missed exits. And everyone on the line knows the line by heart. No aircraft survives Gray 12. At least not yet. That belief sets the stakes for today now. Heat wobbles over the runway at Camp Ridgeway as the morning pretends to be ordinary. The smell of JP-8 hangs thin, while forklifts glide and headset cords snap against sleeves. The base talks in small sounds. Boots click. Tool carts. Pause. And the horizon shivers like a mirage that knows something the rest of us do not. Lieutenant Cole Evelyn Parker walks the line with quiet shoulders and flight gloves already on. She is Ghost 3. The kind of pilot who treats habit like armor and lets skill do the talking. Inside, Hangar 4. An A-10C Thunderbolt II waits under a tarp that never looks fully still. Write-ups sit in the forms. But there is no red X. And the airplane is legal if hands stay exact. AL-47CMDS shows degraded, and a few flare and chaff buckets are not ready. The jet wears scuffs like a work belt, and nothing on it asks for sympathy. Parker moves like a checklist, remembers her. Battery, on, and the APU spools, with that dry whine that says the day has started, whether anyone likes it or not. She selects EGI stored heading alignment and watches it settle to good enough for the route she already carries in her head. Radios come alive with guard monitored, and the room in her voice stays open for what matters. SAS is confirmed, so the nerves of the airplane will hold steady in the bumps. On the CMSP, she starts in semi, knowing there may be a moment to shift to man if timing needs a human pulse. MSAD Caleb Wright meets her at the rail with sleeves dusty and eyes that count fasteners before words. He trusts OFTO, Form 781, and torque specs more than rumor. And he speaks in clean lines about fuel short of full. Hydraulics touchy. Countermeasures cut back. And systems otherwise honest. Parker listens the way a carpenter checks a beam by feel. The exchange is short and complete. A trade of facts that leaves no air for drama. Across the ramp, the command tent breathes cold air into warm canvas. Capt. Lauren Pierce plays back radio traffic that rises and falls like a pulse and tags likely threats with a grease pencil loop. First Lieutenant Ethan Morales draws ingress and egress that respect terrain, fuel, and wind. Then marks, holds, that make space for good judgment. SS Sergeant Ryan McAllister trims the net until the only thing left is signal. Colonel Patrick Nolan keeps the center without raising his voice. He asks if Indigo 6 is alive, and the answer pushes every hand in the room toward preparation instead of debate. Back in the hangar, Parker checks the panels once more and settles the cords where they will not snag. The jet feels like a tool that wants clear purpose, and she gives it one by being exact. Outside, the base shifts one click tighter. Laughter thins. Footsteps square up. And a runner with a flat folder cuts the sunlit concrete like a line drawn with intent. Nothing dramatic happens, and yet everything does. The day has moved from maybe to almost, and the next decision will carry the weight of people breathing in a canyon that does not forgive. The yellow line of the restricted bay runs like a quiet warning across sun-baked concrete. Lieutenant Cole Evelyn Parker steps over it without ceremony. Flight gloves already on. Shoulders square to the work. The choice is plain enough to taste, and it carries people breathing at the bottom of Gray 12. Sergeant Caleb Wright meets her at the ladder with a report that is all muscle. No fat. Fuel sits short of full. Hydraulics are touchy. ALE-47CMDS is degraded, with several flare and chaff buckets not ready. Write-ups exist. And there is no red X. The jet is legal if the hands stay exact. Parker asks only what matters and gets the answer she needs. The airplane will take off with certainty. And landing will depend on margins. Runway. And procedures done right. Risk is not a dare here. It is a calculation paid for in inches. She pulls the tarp clean and climbs the integrated boarding ladder into the cockpit that fits like a tool. Battery on and the APU spools to a dry, steady whine as the panels wake. EGI's stored heading alignment comes up to good. Radios are set with guard monitored. SAS is confirmed. And the countermeasures panel starts in semi with a plan to shift to man if timing must be human. Tower calls for intentions and withholds taxi. Parker reads the words for what they are and releases the brakes anyway. Nose wheel rolling, as if the aircraft had been waiting all morning. The violation is not hidden, and the purpose is not small. Out on the flight line, faces lift, then drift aside on their own. Procedures live on paper, but Gray 12 lives in memory. And boots find room for the warthog to pass. The base exhales in a thinner rhythm as the jet turns for the taxiway. Inside her headset, the flow stays clean and spare. Checks run short and honest. Cords are tucked. And the seat rails carry the vibration of a machine that tells the truth. The stakes ride in silence with her, and the weight of them steadies the hands. Discipline and consequence are part of the bargain, and she takes both with open eyes. The uniform code will have its day if she comes back. But the canyon has people now, and they do not. The nose begins to creep, and the decision leaves the room where talk matters. The command tent finds its balance as soon as Ghost 3 starts to roll. Colonel Patrick Nolan holds the center with one steady question about whether Indigo is still breathing. The answer locks the room on a single purpose. He does not try to fly the jet from a chair. He builds a frame that pilots can trust. Time windows. Ingress and egress axes. Altitude bands. A hard deck. Clean deconfliction. And a lean report flow are set in plain terms. Rotary Detachment 47 takes its task with no drama. 2 CH-47F Chinook airframes will execute casualty evacuation or extraction only after the corridor is declared clear by Ghost 3. Heavy lift will not test luck inside the canyon. Captain Lauren Pierce works the feeds with an eye for what can hurt first. She marks firing points on the map and ranks them with short notes that everyone understands. Her pencil loops are thick and deliberate, so no one misses them under pressure. First Lieutenant Ethan Morales draws routes that respect fuel, wind, and terrain. He adds holding points far enough to buy judgment and a secondary exit if weather turns or threat lines shift. Tape pins the plan where hands can reach it without searching. Staff Sergeant Ryan McAllister shapes the radios into a clean channel. He cuts chatter and keeps only short bursts that carry facts and positions. Pilots should hear their own breathing, not a wall of voices. The rules for the net are simple and repeated once. Call signs, position, and status go first. Everything else waits unless it changes the risk right now. The map lies flat, and the tent hums with fans and quiet power. Hands move less, but with more intent. And the flow starts to feel like a machine that has been tuned. A final black loop circles Gray 12 and stays there like a fixed star. Nolan checks the frame without raising his voice. Pierce tracks threats. Morales guards the path for heavy lift. McAllister keeps the air clear. The room is done arguing and is now ready to back the pilot already in the canyon. Outside, heat shimmers over the ramp while forklifts fade into the background. Inside, pens stop moving because they have drawn enough. The next words will be for Ghost 3 when the corridor begins to open. Ghost 3 takes the A-10C Thunderbolt 2 airborne and drops the nose almost at once. She settles into nap of the earth, where stone becomes a shield and sound hides in seams. The canyon ahead waits like a puzzle that punishes guesses. The radar altimeter becomes a metronome in her ears. She rides numbers that live just above a self-imposed hard deck. Never lower. The goal is simple and hard at the same time. Stay close enough to vanish without touching a thing. Micro inputs do most of the work. A thumb twist on trim smooths a shiver. A fingertip, nudge on the stick, settles a wingtip. And a small pull on the throttle erases a gust. Stability augmentation system stays on, so the jet holds its nerve when the air does not. She reads air pressure the way a sailor reads water. Thick air near the floor lets her by a foot. Thin air in a bend tells her to give it back. The dance is constant and quiet and always honest. Cockpit workload gets cut to the bone. Non-essential cautions are cleared, so the cone in front of the nose gets all the attention it demands. RWRANALR 69 sits on the threat page. Missile warning system listens without chatter. And guard stays in the background like a lifeline that does not tangle. The countermeasures management set panel starts in semi for sane recommendations. She already knows there may be a moment to shift to man where rhythm matters more than automation. In this place, the right flare at the wrong time is still wrong. Terrain masking is a gift with a bill attached. Rock can blind a shooter and also blind the only safe exit if the egress is late by half a second. She treats every shadow as cover and also as a trap to be checked twice. The first setup run takes shape inside the canopy glass. Map in the head meets rock outside until the picture snaps into one layer. Indigo 6 gets locked in a mental do not touch box to keep deconfliction sacred when the gun later speaks. Dust and heat drift talk, even when radios stay quiet. She reads the flag of grit along a ledge and steals half a degree to counter wind that lies in a gorge. Each turn grabs a slice of shade to push the signature down, then slides behind a rib to cut every curious line of sight. Ground effect brushes the belly now and then, and she lets it pass without riding it. The profile stays low, tight, and thin, so the jet looks like it belongs to the canyon rather than the sky. The horizon narrows until it is a blade, and the mouth of Gray 12 opens into one window wide enough to matter. Breathing slows to the beat of engines that feel steady and close. The airplane is inside the problem now, and the problem has not noticed yet. From here, every inch is a decision, and every second is a promise to leave clean if the angle is not perfect. The roll-in is clean and measured. The pipper sits steady, and the airspeed holds the sweet band so the sight does not walk. The nose stays shallow to keep ricochet from skipping toward Indigo 6. The GAU-8A speaks in a short burst that lasts a breath and a half. 30 by 1, 73 rounds stitch a tight rake and then stop so the barrel can breathe. She is already leaving the angle. Egress is low and quick. The jet folds into terrain masking and slips behind a rib of stone. The next pass will come on a fresh axis so no one can set a trap. Dust tells the truth when radios are quiet. A faint flag along the ridge says the wind is cheating left by half a degree. She adds the correction and keeps the radar altimeter honest. Stability augmentation system stays on to steady the airframe when the gorge throws a shoulder. Communications stay minimal so no one steps on another pilot's breath. The net carries facts and nothing more. Cockpit workload is trimmed to what matters. Known essential cautions are cleared. The RWR and ALR-69 rides on the threat page, while the missile warning system listens in silence. Countermeasures start in semi for sane timing. She is ready to shift to man if the canyon demands human rhythm. In this place, even a good flare at the wrong beat can make things worse. Deconfliction never leaves her mind. Indigo 6 sits inside a mental do-not-touch box that fences the gun line and the egress lane. Every turn respects that box as if it were made of glass. Pass 2 removes an observation perch that had eyes into the floor. The pipper pauses on target. A crisp, 1-second burst lands. And she slides away before the echo can come back. The ridge loses a lookout without warning. Pass 3 answers a higher priority firing point. She holds the shallow angle and keeps an offset that protects the friendlies. A tidy burst hits and the airplane is already bending into shadow. Ground effect brushes the belly like a hand along a table. She does not ride it and she does not fight it. The profile stays low, tight, and thin inside the moving shade of the rock. Every pass follows the same discipline because the CMDS is degraded. Clean in, short fire, fast out, no lingering in the kill zone. Each orbit brings a fast scan of fuel state. Engine temps, radar altimeter, MWS quiet, and ALR-69 clean. Updates are short and useful. Position, status, next action, then back to work. The net stays clear of drama and heavy with purpose. On the ground, the pattern shifts in small ways. Incoming fire stutters and then fades. The men who had gone still begin to move with intent. Order returns the way it should return, in a hard place. The lines from the GAU-8A feel like a scalpel and not a storm. The stage is set for an insight, waiting on the ridge where the heat blooms are aimed not at a cast jet, but at a path a Chinook will fly. Heat blooms along the south ridge tell a different story. The dots do not look down into the canyon floor. They stare outward toward the approach lane, where rotor wash and hot exhaust will hang. Fields of view stack like cards, each one covering a slice of sky. The geometry reads like a net that waits for heavy lift, not a trap for a close air support jet. Lieutenant Cole Evelyn Parker reads the pattern and feels the purpose click. This is an ambush set for Rotary Detachment 47. 2 CH-47F Chinook airframes will have to pass through that window. If the screen stays up, the corridor never exists. Parker shifts priority without drama. She sends a short call that she is engaging the south ridge. Comms stay minimal. Deconfliction stays tight. And the countermeasures panel remains in semi with a plan to move to man when timing belongs in her thumb. Inside the command tent, Capt. Lauren Pierce tags infrared MANPADS nests in order of threat. She marks lines of fire that intersect the helicopter lane and pushes an update that is short and useful. The map begins to show a screen rather than scattered shooters. First Lieutenant Ethan Morales redraws the path for heavy lift with a conservative hand. He adds a hold far enough out to wait for a clear call and a secondary exit that works if wind or threat lines shift. Fuel and time get guarded like lives because they are. Staff Sergeant Ryan McAllister trims the net until nothing steps on anything else. Position, status, and change only, said in clean bursts. Pilots should hear their own breathing and the one fact that matters next. Colonel Patrick Nolan keeps the frame steady and does not try to fly the jet from a chair. He lets the plan pivot around the reality that an A-10C is already inside the canyon. Support bends to the pilot who has the picture through glass, not through a screen. Back over the rocks, Parker drops the nose into a tidy setup run that favors a clean egress. She glances at the threat page and at the quiet missile warning system, then checks the radar altimeter and fuel. The airplane feels heavy in a good way, like a tool about to be used for the thing it was built to do. The room and the ridge arrive at the same conclusion. The scattered pieces form one clear image and the tempo rises by a notch. From here, every second belongs to tearing out the screen so the two Chinooks can come in and get out alive. The south ridge rises in the glass and the jet feels heavy in a good way. Airspeed sits in the band where the pipper stays honest, and the G-load pins her into the seat without stealing control. Cautions flicker at the edges and then fall away as task focus narrows. She holds a shallow line so the gun will not throw metal toward Indigo 6. The GAU-8A speaks for 1.5 seconds, and the sight picture collapses on a launcher that turns to scrap. Egress begins before the echo finishes, and the airplane disappears into shadow. Terrain masking cuts view lines as she slides behind a spur. A quick scan checks fuel state, engine temps, and a radar altimeter that reads true. Missile warning system stays quiet, and the ANALR-69 shows no fresh threats. She circles back on a shifted axis to stay unpredictable. The pipper sets. The band holds. And a tight second burst cuts a firing point that stares straight into the helicopter lane. The jet leaves low and fast because this canyon punishes linger. A white spear jumps from the ridge and rakes across her peripheral vision. The seeker reaches for the Chinook that is holding outside the mouth, hungry for rotor wash and hot exhaust. Lieutenant Cole Evelyn Parker moves without ceremony and takes the line away. She slides the A-10C between the missile and the helicopter, offering twin GETF-34S as the brighter target. Missile warning system begins to wail, and the ANALR-69 hums under it like a drum. She flips the countermeasures from semi to man, so timing lives under her thumb. This is not a bet on flares. This is a terrain problem with a terrain answer. Training writes the next steps in her hands. She banks toward the shooter and keeps the nose honest, so the seeker does not get a gift. The airplane presses along the wall to cut line of sight. Radar altimeter. Riding just above a hard deck, she will not cross. Stability augmentation system stays on, so control feels crisp under changing loads. Trim holds authority, while speed and bank angle shift faster than comfort. The first flare bloom goes wide in the seeker's mind because the engines paint a hotter truth. The missile settles on the jet and follows like a moth chasing a porch light. Rock scrapes sound into a single note as she rides the wall. Dust ribbons under the belly, and the horizon thins to a narrow blade that points at a slot. Timing becomes a breath you can count and then cannot count anymore. She holds the line a few beats longer to drag the missile deeper into the seam. At the mark, she pulls clean along the stone and tightens the turn until glass is full of rock. The seeker cannot bend that corner and drives straight into granite. The blast hits sideways and shakes the airframe hard. The horizontal stabilizer shudders and then finds a steady tremor. One engine coughs and relights while a hydraulic caution blinks and fades. Her hand rests on the manual reversion handle while eyes sweep the panel. The system remains in normal and she is ready to select reversion only if the hydraulics fail, the way the checklist demands. A quick CMDS test shows partial response and the engine temps read rough but within life. Fuel sits tighter than she wants, and the horizon is not level, but it is honest. The radios carry a clipped update and then go quiet again. In the command tent, the room understands that she killed a missile with stone and not with a fistful of flares. Breathing returns to the pace of engines. She gathers the jet into a low protective orbit and watches the ridge for new teeth. The act just bought time for two Chinooks that still need a clean sky to move lives out of a hard place. Ghost 3 holds a low guard around Gray 12. Offset from the rotor lane, so her wake never touches the helicopters. Lieutenant Colonel Evelyn Parker keeps the orbit tight and clean, firing only to cut threads that try to reach up from the rock. On the floor, Senior Chief Dylan Hart moves the team with quiet authority. Petty Officer Aaron Blake checks airways and locks litters, while Chief Trent Sawyer watches the flanks and calls the path. The first CH-47F Chinook kisses the dirt and drops the ramp early. Crew chiefs and the flight engineer guide casualties up the deck as rotor wash turns the landing zone into a brown storm. And Ghost 3 stays clear of the hot air rolling off the disk. A last glint flashes on the ridge and Parker rolls in from the cold side. The GAU-8A speaks for a blink. The threat folds, and she has already gone back into shadow. The second Chinook slides in as the first lifts heavy and turns out. Head count, straps, rifles, and eyes are confirmed in clipped calls that waste nothing. Communications stay minimal and guard is still monitored. Every cockpit scan hits fuel state. Engine temps, the radar altimeter, a quiet missile warning system, and an ALR-69 that stays clean. Both helicopters climb slowly and neatly along the route. First Lieutenant Ethan Morales drew. Captain Lauren Pierce confirms the ridge is quiet. And Staff Sergeant Ryan McAllister keeps the net as light as breath. She brings the A-10C Thunderbolt II home low and fast. On centerline. Tires bite. The arrival is firm. Aerobrake holds. Then she turns clear as the fire crew closes in. Ramp noise softens while chocks, pins, and covers drop into place. Soot stripes mark the tail and control feels. MS Goat Caleb Wright walks the length. Eyes on seams and leaks. Saying little. An unmarked car stops and two plainclothes invite her in. Reading violations. Then outcomes. 6 lives saved. 11 positions neutralized. 2 CH-47F Chinooks preserved. A storm glass patch slides across table. The flight line stands quiet.